Hey everybody. So we're just going to wait until people start arriving and then we will begin the stream. But in the meantime, we wanted to thank everybody who's been so patient with us and let everybody know that we really appreciate all of you and that we really appreciate all of your support, especially while we are dealing with tough things in our day-to-day life. So thank you, everybody. That's fine. So said cannot be here long. I just wanted to say hi. That's perfectly fine that you can't be here long. Um, just glad that you could stop by and say hello. We're certainly glad to say hi to anybody who wants to just stop in. So nothing wrong with that. So how are you doing? I'm well, currently at dinner. Oh, awesome. Glad that you're doing well, and I hope you're enjoying your dinner. We had a fairly light dinner today, but nothing wrong with that. And we had a couple little squares of chocolate for dessert, so we're pretty happy about it at the moment anyway. I am. I hope all is well with you. Well, I'm glad that things are going well for you and that, you're having a good time at dinner. And things are all right. I mean, they've been kind of tough the last couple of days. We actually had to do an emergency therapy session on Thursday. So that was special. But things since then have definitely improved. We got some new coping skills from our therapist, which are helping us to process some new stuff going on because we actually had a system member who was previously in a catatonic dormant state wake up, and now they're trying to figure out where they fit into our system as it is currently and trying to catch up on everything they've missed over the last 20 years. And it's thrown everything a little bit into chaos, so we had to get some help with that. Oh my, is everything okay? You don't have to go into detail. I'm just a bit worried. Yeah, we're doing all right. We're just this new, or at least new to me, system member suddenly being awake. It was something that kind of threw us all for a loop. We weren't expecting it. It happened very suddenly, and it kind of threw everything into a bit of chaos and was bringing up a lot of trauma stuff that we hadn't processed yet, and it was throwing off our ability to function, and mine especially. So we just needed to touch base with our therapist and get some extra help in between sessions to try to fix the complete dysfunctional spiral we were kind of falling into, because we weren't really sleeping or functioning because we were having constant nightmares and being incredibly emotionally sensitive and flashbacky, and it just really wasn't good. But thankfully, the emergency therapy session really helped to get us on a more even keel and feel better. So that was definitely positive. Howdy, Y'allins. Hello, Squip. Nice to see you. I hope you got the email responses that we sent to the most recent emails that you had sent us? Because I don't remember if we've gotten a response from you or not. If so, ignore me. I'm just being forgetful. If not, then, whenever it is that you do respond, we'll make sure to respond back. My glasses keep falling down my face today. Do not know why. Still hashing it out. Okay, well, that's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. You take however much time you need. I just wanted to make sure that I had not missed something or that we hadn't missed something from you. I'm glad you're all right. That cannot be easy. So I hope you take care of yourselves, okay? Thank you. We really appreciate that. And you take good care of you too, okay? Because we definitely want everybody to be practicing good self-care and, meeting their own needs and taking good care of themselves, especially because the start of a new year can be a little stressful. It's a paradigm shift without a clutch. Yeah, you mentioned that before, and I can see why. I mean, it's one of those things that when you spend your entire life functioning a certain way, you don't think much about it in the way that it looks to people outside of that. Like, I legitimately cannot imagine what it is like to function as a single identity in a single body with nobody else. That is unfathomable to me because I literally don't remember a time in which there weren't multiple of us. So the idea of being a singleton, I suppose, is as much a foreign concept to me as being multiple would be to you. So it makes sense that it would be a thing that you would need to process, that it would be something that would take time to work through. That definitely makes a lot of sense. We try, forgive, I forgot to mention we are a system, so yes, we are learning self-care. We'll get there, I know it. I'm definitely sure that you guys will. It does take time, and it is okay that it takes time. Take as much time as you need on your healing journey. It is a marathon, it is not a sprint. And I hope you all know that, there is no pressure from anyone over here, and no one should ever try to pressure you to go faster than you're ready. So take it at your own pace, and it's okay to be at where you're at. Just keep working, and you will get there when you are ready to get there. You're healing. That's a rough road, but you're also taking on the mantle of helping others heal. That shows great virtue. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's something that it is hard. It is hard sometimes to balance advocacy and helping others and self-care. There are times when I have to remind myself, or the others have to remind me, or we have to remind someone else in our system that it's okay to need a break, that it's okay to not be up to answer a comment right away, or it's okay to, not be able to do something right now. That's something that is difficult for us sometimes. Now, thankfully, because of the different techniques we've learned in therapy, we're able to do that. It's just there's always that initial, we're not doing enough fear that comes up. And, the reality is that we have to accept we can't be everything for everyone. We have to be able to accept our own limitations, and that's hard for us sometimes. It isn't easy to admit that there are some things we can't do, because my entire function in our system is to be functional and capable. It's especially difficult for me. But thankfully, therapy is a wonderful thing and it's really helping. And I'm learning how to accept what I cannot change. So some days that's easier said than done. I must agree with Squip. You are all amazing for just being yourselves and helping others by being able to be real. That's true strength. Oh, I thank you. That's really awesome. That actually really means a lot. Thank you. Synonymous with the story of the child and the starfish. I've not heard that story. You'd have to let us know what that story is about, because I actually don't know. That's one I've not heard of before. Squip, could you share? If not in here, then feel free to send us an email. I understand not accepting your limitation sounds just like me, Sini. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because you look at other people and you see the things that they can do, especially people who don't have a trauma history. And it can be really hard to feel like you don't measure up. And, granted, we should never compare ourselves to other people because everyone is different and it's not healthy to compare yourselves to someone else or to someone else's experience. But I think it's an unfortunate pitfall of having a trauma history that you have a tendency to look at yourself through the lens of other people. And that is something that we have worked really, really hard on. And so it is a much less common occurrence now. But it's definitely difficult sometimes to remember that just because someone else can do something doesn't mean that we're lesser if we can't do it. You guys do help more than you know. You've helped us a lot, Sini. Oh, awesome. So glad to know that. That is honestly all we really want, is to know that we are helping people and that we're legitimately making a difference, because that is our ultimate goal, is to help people and build up people, because we really wish somebody had been there to do that for us. And we really want to be that for other people. And it was actually seeing videos by other systems like Multiplicity and me and Dissociated that prompted us to decide to create a channel and do this, because we saw here were these other people, especially Multiplicity and me, because she was the first one that we ever saw. Specifically Jess, because we hadn't seen any of the videos with the boys yet. But Multiplicity and me was the first channel that we ever saw that a person with DID was talking about their experiences as being part of a system. And it really made us realize that, hey, we can do that too. We can share our experiences and help other people. And the more voices that we add, the better. I mean, of course, not everyone can make a channel and not everyone can speak out publicly and openly, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has to do what's safe and comfortable for them. But for us, it felt like this was something we needed to do, because we spent so much of our life dealing with secrets and hiding and having to keep quiet, that it felt really empowering to be able to say, no, this is who we are. This is why this happens. And, we're not horror movie tropes. We're not monsters. it felt really empowering to be able to stand up and say that and know that maybe we might spare someone else from being afraid of their diagnosis, like a lot of people are, and like we were initially. So the synopsis of the story is: a wave washes up several starfish on a beach. A child is picking up a starfish in a bucket and taking them back to the sea. Another person comes along and says, what you're doing doesn't matter. You can't help them all. The child responds, it matters to this one. Oh, that's awesome. That's a really cool story. Thank you for sharing that, Squib. We really like that. That's really true, because you can't help everyone. It's just not possible. There's always going to be someone that you're not able to help. And we have run into that. And it's hard. But it's good to know that we help those who we can help. I mean, we're not superhuman. There's a limit to what we can do. But any help that we provide is good for us, in our opinion, because that is what's important. That's why we do this. Because we want people to know they're not alone. We want people to see people with dissociative disorders as people and not as what Hollywood has painted us to be. We do this to help people and to help ourselves too. I mean, in all reality, this helps us too. It helps us to feel empowered in a way that we've never been able to feel before, being able to speak openly about who we are. So it's one of those things that doing this has helped us in a lot of ways too that we weren't expecting. So it's been a good experience creating this channel in general. Hello. Ah, yay, good topic for us to have popped into. Hello. Welcome. To say to the world, I'm human. Yes, definitely. I'm afraid we have to go. I hope to see you all soon. Have a nice and safe day/night. You too. Have a good rest of your day or night, and hope you're safe and take care of yourselves. I'm actually in a new relationship, and he is being amazing, and it's one of two people who knows about us in our real lives. He's accepted me as us. They don't have to hide, and that means so much. Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to be accepted. It's something that I think a lot of people who haven't had struggles outside of what is typical unintentionally take for granted, the idea of acceptance, because for most people who have just your average typical struggles, acceptance isn't something that they have to think too much about. Sure, there's going to be people who don't like them, but at least some people will accept them. But when you've got something going on that is not only outside of the typical, but is stigmatized, like a dissociative disorder is, it's harder because you can't assume that you'll be accepted. And I definitely think that that's an important thing for people to understand, is that, everyone's experience is unique, but that people who have struggles that are stigmatized or outside of the norm often struggle in a way that is different than what people normally think of. People, when they think about dissociative disorders, they think about the struggles with the disorder itself and not so much the struggles in living your life that come with it, the outside perspective that affects you. Regarding Hollywood, I can't say enough how annoyed I am at how people get scared when they find out I'm a combat vet. You can see the fear build in their eyes from my partner's little squee. Happy days likes them. Aww. And that's referencing the color pages. Oh, that's awesome. And I completely understand that look that you're talking about, that, oh, you're dangerous look that people get. We've run into that a couple of times, and it's not fun to be looked at like you're a monster or like you're scary. So while we can't understand the combat aspect of that, and thank you for your service, we can certainly relate to that feeling of being looked at like you're somehow a loaded weapon being pointed at them just because you exist. And that's not a good feeling. And so glad that we made the littles happy, because, we always like making littles happy. Littles are precious and should be protected and loved and taken care of. I mean, granted, all people should, but especially littles and children in general, because they need that extra care in a different way than an adult or a teenager would. Squip, those people are afraid of something they don't understand, and I wish that wasn't how the world is. Yeah, agreed. I definitely wish that too, and most of us are pretty much on that same page, that we all wish the world was a lot more accepting. Some of us perhaps are a little more, I suppose, jaded than others, but it's a general consensus that it would really be nice if the world didn't supremely suck at accepting difference, or accepting that something is outside of their understanding, but that doesn't make it bad. Yeah, or a pariah. Yeah, that too. That's not an okay way to treat a person. And I just legitimately cannot understand anyone behaving that way. I mean, I completely understand setting boundaries, not letting someone be a part of your life if they're harming you in some way or treating you badly in some way, but cutting someone off or shunning them just because you don't understand their experience is not an okay thing to do to people. And I really don't get it. I don't think I will ever understand that. That is not a mindset I can wrap my head around. Sini, I concur. You're welcome. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that everything's okay. Sorry, got a little lost on the whole things here. Okay, you're welcome. Yay, smiley face. Seating, I concur. Yes, glad you guys both agree, because it's always good to have good conversations going on in the comments. Apologies, but who is out at the moment? We were late. Oh, sorry, it's Kit at the moment. Right now, I am fairly co-conscious with Berserker and Marie and Jeremy. They've been helping me to manage all of the current chaos going on in our system since one of our catatonic members woke up. So they've been really close, helping me to manage the flooding and the flashbacks and the emotional sensitivity that's been coming with that. That was a suggestion from our therapist, which has really helped, was that I ask specifically for help. And oh my goodness, was that hard to do? I am not good at asking for help. I'm really not. Like, I will do it, but I don't like to. And I think that's partly because my job in our system is to be functional. My job is to be the, normal face that everyone sees. So it's really hard for me to ask for help, even when I really need it. I've gotten better at it, but it's still hard. Have you ever read Clan of the Cave Bear? I read it a long time ago, but I honestly don't remember much about it. It's one of those things where sometimes memories get a little lost or discombobulated somewhere. I'm sure if I were to look at it and start reading it, I would remember what it was about, but just looking at it in my head, I can't get that memory at the moment for some reason, I guess. Squip, indeed. I think if you surround people in your world with the mentality of acceptance, the world would be a better place for you. Definitely. Definitely. So many thousands of times, yes. Surround yourself with people who care about you. Surround yourself with people who accept you. And you know what? People who don't accept you, that's a them problem. That doesn't say anything about you. Just wanted to mention that because that is something that we've struggled a lot with in the past. So we wanted to make sure that everybody hears that because that was something we needed to hear a lot. So we're hoping that might be helpful to anybody out there who needed to hear that today. So glad I am not the only one who literally cannot fathom or understand how people can be so cruel to one another. Yeah. It's it's strange. It like the people that we associate with when we talk to them about these kinds of things, it's not something they can fathom either. So I think it's just one of those things that it's unfortunately common only because ignorance is unfortunately common, but that probably more people than we realize are not okay with the idea of people treating each other badly or being terrible to each other. I think it's just unfortunately that a loud minority of people who are okay with being that way to other people make it seem like it's a lot more than it is. Hopefully, I mean, that might just be a little bit of idealist hopefulness over here, but I'm really hoping that most people legitimately don't think it's okay to be bad to other people. Hello, Kit, Berserker, Jeremy, and Bree. Nice to see you all. Hello from all of us. Nice to see you too. Yep. All too relatable. Asking is the hardest. Yes. Yes, it is. And, considering the health problems that we have with our body and the mental health issues that we've struggled with and the number of times we've gone to therapy, you think we'd have an easier time of it by now, but no, it doesn't really seem to get all that much easier. It gets less uncomfortable, but it's certainly not easier, if that makes sense. Regarding who is out, thanks for the clarification. Your body language says Kit, but your voice says Kit plus maybe Berserker. Spelling, my apologies. Oh, yeah, it's fine. Whenever we're co-conscious as close as all of us are right now, it tends to be a lot of slipping in of other people's traits. It's one of those interesting things. It's not that we're really blended per se, it's more just that while I'm talking, other people are involved at the same time, and it just all kind of muddles together. That's the best way I could describe it. We're all still distinctly separate. Our affects and behaviors just get blended together, if that makes sense. Regarding Clan of the Cave Bear, my wondering was this in the first chapter, Alia lost her parents to an earthquake and spent time trying to survive Paleolithic times as a toddler. I reflect on it and wonder if the loss and privation could have caused OSDD or DID. Yes, it could. Any trauma that is significant enough to the individual experiencing it has the potential to create a dissociative disorder. If that person is predisposed to developing a dissociative disorder, because not everyone is. Everyone has, I guess, what you could call inborn coping tendencies, ways that their brain specifically functions to deal with things. And some people are more prone to one coping mechanism over another. Like, everyone dissociates to some degree. That's what daydreaming is. That's what sitting in the car, driving somewhere on autopilot, and then not really remembering the trip when you get there is. But not everyone is automatically going to cope through dissociation. That's why not everybody develops DID or OSDD or another dissociative disorder who experiences trauma, because that predisposition to cope that way has to be there for that to be the most likely outcome. Question, how to word this, memory sharing or internal communication. How would you describe your experiences? How do system members show or communicate information to each other? Okay, well, for us, that's been an evolving concept over time. Originally, we communicated mostly through accounts from other people of what had been done or said by whoever happened to be out at the time, which were then relayed to whoever happened to be there and receiving the information. That eventually evolved into sharing notes, and then that evolved into internal communication where we were speaking to each other internally and sharing thoughts and memories that way. So it really depends on an individual system's place in their healing journey and their natural inclinations to communicate in particular ways, how they will communicate with their system mates. But that is how we have communicated. And at this point, we primarily communicate through internal communication. Once in a while, we will actually talk to each other out loud, especially if lots of people are talking at once. A lot of times, whoever is out will just be like, hey, whoa, whoa. And we'll actually speak out loud to everyone, but mostly it's internal communication. We haven't needed to use notes or other forms in a long time, but that's just because we've worked so hard on our internal communication. But for some systems, note taking or note passing is essential. So it's really just going to depend. And when you remember or look back, what is it like? For instance, for us, it's mostly third-person perspective and pictures of the body. At a random time, do you all experience anything similar? Yes. For me, especially as the host, because I have a different relationship to memories and our internal world and things like that than my system mates. When I look back at memories, it often does appear in a third person perspective. Like I'm watching our body do something. Like I'm watching from the outside. And it's an odd experience, honestly. And in some memories, it's like I am simultaneously watching from the outside and seeing from the perspective. It all really depends on who happened to be out for that particular memory, whether or not that's a memory that's been shared with me, or if it's a memory I was present for, how I see it when I look back, if that makes sense. Because if I was the one who was out and I look back at a memory, then a lot of times I see it from my own perspective, like I'm looking through my eyeballs, but also from an outside perspective, probably because there's always some level of dissociation with our memories in general, especially if there was any kind of stress or anything going on at the time, which, let's be honest, we have complex PTSD and other mental health issues that mean that we're kind of under stress a lot. So there's always some slight level of dissociation there. But I hope that explains a little bit. We're not being too confusing over here. I have a similar experience with memory. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. This is validating. Would love to know more. Light bulb moment. The character Brain Trust from the Aces Abroad series. Two of her absorbed personalities would argue physics out loud. Her super ability was similar to Rogue of X-Men fame. She would absorb the consciousnesses of others. Oh, interesting. Well, hey, it's not actually that uncommon to run into characters in fiction that have aspects of dissociative disorders, even if they're not actually ever labeled with a dissociative disorder in that fiction. But that's actually something that we've found very validating when looking at different fictional concepts, is that, even if maybe they're not labeling that as a dissociative disorder, it's still showing it in a far more positive light than a lot of fiction does, so we kind of count that as a win. Okay, others, thank you so much for sharing. Makes sense, I think. Very helpful and interesting. Will be good to go back when less in real time dissociated. I thought memories in general were just third person for all until recently. Yeah, it's one of those things that you take for granted your own experiences as being the norm, because for you they are. So it can always be an interesting experience to realize that what you experience is vastly different from what other people are experiencing. I cannot tell you the number of times that something has come up and I went, oh, so not everyone has that. Huh, who knew? So I can relate to that, especially when, we were younger, and the realization that not everybody had these other voices that they shared a headspace with and talked to. And that was when that denial and all of those dissociative barriers started slamming down hard, was when we were younger and started realizing that, oh God, we're different from everyone around us and somebody's going to know. And oh no, yeah, it was, uh, but yeah, completely understand where you're coming from on that though. It's always jarring to realize that your experience is not the norm. And in fact, we've actually had that a lot with home life stuff from our past or experiences with other people that, we look at them and we've always thought of them as that's just the way it was. That was the norm. There was nothing strange going on there. But with the knowledge that we've gained over time, now when we look back at it, we realize, oh, hey, that was actually incredibly messed up. So it's always that weird paradox of trying to integrate the new knowledge that you have with the sense of your past. And that's actually something that we're working on right now in therapy, is integrating that idea of what we thought our past was with what it really was. And that is hard to do. When I look back at our past and realize that I don't have a complete picture, it's scary because your memories and experiences make you who you are in a lot of ways. They don't define everything, but they do define a lot of the way that you perceive the world and the way you function in the world. So, whenever new stuff, to me anyway, is new, I mean, it's not really new, it was always there, but whenever something that I previously was not aware of comes up, it's always jarring because it changes the scape of our history. And that is hard. I'm sure that, others in the comments here who are also part of a system can understand what that's like, even if your experience is not exactly the same. It's very disconcerting to realize that what you think your past isn't what it is. It's hard. It is. From the other side of the memory spectrum, my memory is dang near photographic. It took me a while to realize most people's memories are like a sieve. Yep, I can see why that would be interesting. I cannot imagine what that is like. I mean, in some ways, I imagine that that can be a positive, but in others, I imagine that that could also be incredibly negative, especially if that intense recall also goes along with any negative experiences. I can see that that could be both a blessing and a curse. So I can certainly understand that, that's difficult when that's your norm to realize that it isn't for everyone else. Yep, indeed. Funny how your brain normalizes things until new info and hindsight meet. I think journals, art, etc. from the past help us, but it's difficult to know if I am invading system members' privacy. Yeah, I can relate to that. That's kind of a difficult one to navigate. I think that that's more of an instance of you have to communicate as best you can with the individual system members whose writings or art it is that you want to look back at. And I guess in a sense ask their permission to view those things. That's been our general way of handling that. That if it wasn't done by whoever is out specifically at the time, that they need to ask before looking, just because not everyone in our system is comfortable sharing those things with everyone else right now. It is our ultimate goal eventually to have what we call an integrated memory, meaning we don't want to integrate ourselves into a single self, but we want to have access to all of the same memories. We want everyone to have access to all of the information so that there's no longer these big blank spots in our memory for people like me. And that is a lot harder when it comes to negative experiences, but that's definitely something that we're working toward, and hopefully we'll eventually get to a point where not only have we healed our trauma experiences in as much as is possible to heal, but that we've bridged that gap in memory so that we can all have a complete picture of our past and then be allowed to make sense of that what we will in our own individual ways. Thanks for the feedback on Isla. I've been sketching out the basics of a short story or series of stories for my girls. Oh, cool. That's definitely nice. We actually have written all kinds of different stories. A lot of us actually really like to write. Um, we've never published anything. That actually is a personal goal for me. Someday to publish something, probably fiction, but possibly nonfiction if there ever strikes the desire to do that. But yeah, a lot of us do a lot of writing. It's a good way of communicating ideas, I think. And also, just so you know, Squip, there actually is um, a book. I will find the specific name and send it to you because I cannot remember it off the top of my head at the moment. But there is a book specifically geared toward littles in a DID or OSDD system that is supposed to be really helpful because it helps to validate some of the unique experiences that littles have, because littles can sometimes be overlooked by the average population when talking about DID or OSDD or other dissociative type things. So we've heard a lot of good things. We have not read it ourselves. So we're not giving some absolute recommendation that we know that it's good material. Just saying that we've heard about it and we've heard from other systems that it is a positive resource. So we will send that to you and you guys can peruse it. And if it is felt like it might be a good resource, then all the better. Regarding memory integration, it just occurred to me that you've got to go through trust exercises and the team integration process inside. Yep, we very much do. We have to learn how to share with each other. We have to be comfortable sharing that information. And for some of us, that's really not easy because, as I'm sure all of you already know, but for anybody who's watching this later and is not already aware, because dissociative disorders are focused on hiding away those memories that cannot be handled in the moment, a lot of system members can have a really hard time sharing that information. So it's definitely something that does take a lot of trust. Regarding writing, if you feel like sharing, I'd be interested in reading what you wrote. Most likely, that would be cool. Probably want to finish it first. That is our one serious struggle, is we get so many ideas and everybody who likes to write has something to say, and we all start things and then they don't necessarily get finished. But we could certainly give you a couple of samples of different things that we've written, that just understand that they're not currently finished product. Regarding the book, thanks. Resources are happiness. Yes, very much so. Resources are always a good thing. Amazing resources are fantastic. Yes. I personally love to learn and research. I like to have as much information as possible at all times. So I tend to run into a lot of different resources, and that's why I always make sure that, if we're making a video about a particular topic, to try to share as many resources as possible. But the reason we actually ran into the resource for littles was because we were asked by our therapist to find a workbook to work through in therapy. And while we were looking, we happened to run across that. And just figured we would share that information for anybody who might find it useful. We did find a workbook that is going to work for us. And based on everything that we've read about reviews, because we always like to read the reviews and make sure that we know what we're getting into before we start poking around in a book that deals with healing. But from what we've read, it looks like it should be a really good fit for us, and it should really help because it's specifically geared towards polyfragmented systems that have the kind of background that we do. So hopefully that'll help. Writing, all too relatable. Yes, samples and sneak peeks. Yep. Yeah, it is so hard to finish something sometimes. Like, for instance, I have a fiction novel that I've been working on for quite some time at this point that I am about 75% of the way through it, and I'm just really struggling to get that final 25% done so that I can edit it. I think, unfortunately, this is the case of not only just the fact that we all have so many ideas and we get inspired and then we want to start something and everybody wants to express all of their ideas all at once, but also the fact that we have a tendency sometimes, and that's something that we're working really hard on, to have difficulty allowing ourselves to finish something because we don't want to fail. We've gotten way, way better at it with therapy and all of the work that we've done, but for me especially, it's very, very hard to invest myself in something and complete something that there's a possibility that it will not succeed. That always makes me very nervous. And I know that that is largely due to our past. I know why, but it is a hard fear to get past. That fear of failing, that fear of not measuring up. And so hopefully here soon I can get up the gumption to sit down and finish that last 25%. But it's been a bit of a struggle, not gonna lie. Relatable, I don't think we've ever finished a single novel or script we've started. Yeah, it is so much harder to finish things than to start them, isn't it? At least, it is for me. That has got to be one huge logjam, one output, multiple inputs. Oh my goodness, yes. I cannot tell you the number of times that one of us goes to do something and a bunch of people all have ideas and opinions and thoughts on that thing, and what ends up happening is complete and total gibberish coming out of our mouth that makes no real sense, and our actions being completely off the wall. Thankfully, with our communication being at the level that it is now, that doesn't happen very often. But once in a while, we run into the situation where one person goes to say something and several other people go to say something all at once, and we all end up saying the same time, and it just turns into mush. And then nobody's really sure what we were trying to say, and it just gets confusing. Regarding failure, the best way to fail is to do nothing. Yes, and I do legitimately agree. And on a logical level, that's something that I have personally been able to accept and that the others can generally accept as well. But it's that emotional hurdle that is the hard part to get past. It's so much easier to be brave enough to try when it's not something that has a lot of emotional investment. And writing has always been a huge outlet for us. So there's a lot of that emotional investment there. And it just makes it really hard to get past that fear of failure or rejection or not being enough. So it's something that we're working on. It's something that we logically grasp, but emotionally we struggle with, if that makes sense. Therapy. Do y'all have regular weekly therapy, and are y'all able to message your therapist? How has this helped in comparison to a time in your life where you had less frequency or access to a therapist? So, yes, we do have regular weekly therapy, and we also have the option to do extra therapy sessions if necessary. And we do have the ability to message our therapist outside of therapy because she is open to that. And she is a specialist in DID and dissociative disorders. So that has made a huge difference for us working with someone who that is what she does. But in regards to how it's helped in comparison to a time when we didn't have access to therapy, it has made a huge difference. Before we had access to therapy, we were legitimately a mess. We were on a roller coaster of functional, not functional, of being fine and in control and everything's great, and then falling completely apart the next minute and just completely breaking down. We didn't have any real communication. There was a lot of time loss between all of us, and everybody was pretty much fighting to have time and space and control of our body when they decided they wanted to do something or felt the need to do something or were triggered out for whatever reason. And our gatekeeper, Artemis, we call her Artie for short, she was doing everything in her power to keep everything ordered and organized because that's part of her job. But because we didn't have access to therapy and we didn't have the ability to depend on any kind of real coping mechanisms that were healthy, we were triggered a lot. And it meant that sometimes we were switching almost constantly. And there are, in fact, several periods, even in our older years, like for instance, junior year of high school, that I'm missing months of time. There are periods in our past that I look back at, and there are years between when I can remember. And that didn't really change until my daughter was born. So that was, she's very grounding. Having this little person who depends on you, very survival, really makes you stay present. I gotta say. But without therapy, I cannot even imagine where we would be right now. We honestly probably would not be alive. If it were not for therapy, we would likely not be here. Because there are many times that having access to a therapist literally saved our life. So it's made a huge difference. It really has. Great analogy. Yes, that was a great analogy. You have succeeded by starting and working on the project. This is true. This is true. That is definitely a success. Regarding the mush, lol, yeah. It's always interesting when you go to say something and someone else goes to say something and it turns into something that is not English or any language that is perceptible to a human brain. Regarding functional roller coaster, the moment you wonder when your ducks in a row turned into squirrels at a rave, yeah, definitely. You're like, wait, what just happened? Everything was fine, wasn't it? Why is everything suddenly a mess? Ah, yep, roller coaster is apt. Tis us. Ooh, writing, since it is a huge part of your lives. Kit and all, have you ever had system-wide writing blocks or months or years? This is a huge struggle for us currently. Um, we've never had a system-wide writing block, but we've had individual writing blocks that can last for long periods. A lot of times what happens is one of us gets writer's block and another of us goes on an inspiration bonanza and proceeds to just pump out all kinds of ideas and start a whole bunch of things all at once. And then something happens and they get writer's block for a while. And that's why we have about, I don't know, 30 or 40 started stories at pretty much any given time. We end up with a lot of things started because when one of us gets writer's block, it seems like another one of us suddenly has inspiration or ideas. Not really sure if that's what causes the writer's block or if it's just a correlation. I don't know, but it's just kind of one of those interesting cycles for us. When one of us can't create, somebody else can. But yeah, in regards to that novel, I have not actually sat down and written anything on it in several months at this point because our focus has largely been just on trying to deal with healing stuff and family stuff and real life issues and trying to make good content and be a functional working group of people, which is sometimes easier said than done because the last couple years we've been having a little bit harder time with sleep. And for about the last month, I have ended up sleeping until probably 11 o'clock, sometimes noon, and having my husband keep an eye on our daughter while I sleep because I'm just exhausted. So yeah, it's special sometimes. And I'm never really quite sure what causes that either. We will go long periods where we can sleep just fine, and then we will suddenly be hit by a bout of horrendous insomnia. And it actually, now that I think about it, seems to correlate a lot of times with trauma stuff coming up, so maybe that's the reason. Is just our brain is so busy trying to process things that it hasn't processed that sleeping doesn't seem to want to happen. But it's not very fun. Interesting. It's like y'all take turns with the muse. Yeah, it kind of is. It's like we take it's like we pass the baton around. Swip, lol, I like your lingo and humor. Yes, we also do. We agree with that statement. We very much enjoy talking to you, Squip, and to all of you. You know, we really like being able to communicate with other people who, even if they're not part of a system, that they understand some of the experiences that we have or are the loved one of a system like you, Squip, or just are interested in learning more. I mean, we just really like being able to talk to people because we spent so many years having to keep quiet. It's really liberating to be able to just have a conversation openly about all of these things and not have to worry that something bad is going to happen, you know, because there's not as much risk talking about these things online, even here on YouTube where we're making videos, as there is in person. And I think that's probably why it's a lot easier sometimes for us to do that than it is to talk about it in person. That is something that we're working on, but in person there's always a lot more risk than online, if that makes sense. Thank you for your guidance, leadership, and bravery. I've got to get dinner made. Okay, that is awesome. Thank you so much for saying that. That really means a lot to us. And go forth, make dinner. I hope that it is a delicious dinner. Over here, it's 9:06 at night, so it's very far past when we would have dinner. So obviously, it must be earlier for you. Either that or you eat a very late dinner, one or the other. Bye, Squip. Have a good night slash day slash New Year. The internet can be a great place for expressing yourself, especially for people who've had to stay silent about a lot of things for a long time. Definitely true. Yes, that's definitely true. It is it offers you the ability to speak about your experience without the risk of people's in-person reactions that may not always be pleasant. Because on the internet, if someone attacks you or is unpleasant to you, you can block them. Not so in real life. Wouldn't it be nice if you could, though? Hi, Madison. It's 5 a.m. for us. My goodness. That is early. Well, we very much appreciate that you made it to the live stream and that you were willing to be awake at such an uncomfortable hour. I am not a morning person, so I commend your ability to be awake at 5 o'clock in the morning. Mountain Standard Time, I'm nocturnal. Oh, yeah. I'm very much a night person. I don't like mornings. So I can relate to that sentiment. I recently found your channel as I'm learning that I may have OSDD. Oh, well, welcome. And I hope that our videos have been helpful so far, whatever you have viewed. And if there's anything that you want to ask or anything that we can do to help, we have an email. It's up on our YouTube page if you go into the links. So feel free to message us. And if there's anything we can do for you, we will certainly do our best. Your videos have been very helpful. Oh, good. So glad. We always like to know that, you know, the content we're putting out there is helpful because we certainly don't want to end up making content that isn't helping anybody. So it's always good to know. Honestly, some of us have an easier time making videos than others. It's why there's a lot of us that don't. Some of us just don't feel comfortable. But It's an interesting experience to make a video, especially going back and editing it, because I'm the one who knows how to use the editing software. I'm the one who does all of the video editing. So when it's one of my system mates who did a video and I go back and I edit it, it's very interesting to see what our body actually looks like, moving in the way that they move, speaking in the way that they speak. You know, it's interesting to see the mannerisms that I guess I don't ever really think about too much because I don't see them. You know, it's interesting to see the actual difference from an outside perspective. It actually gives us a perspective that we've never had before, you know, unless we were looking in a mirror. And a lot of times when other members of the system are out, they kind of avoid looking in the mirror just because, you know, it's always a little disconcerting for them to see a body that doesn't look like them. So having these video recordings is a unique experience for us. We get to see things about each other that we normally don't. Because even though I'm the one doing the editing, it's not uncommon for others to be co-conscious with me watching while I'm doing it, commenting on this or that or the other thing about the video that they did, that, oh, hey, can you add this note here? Or, oh, hey, can you know, fix that spot where I did something, you know, that doesn't look great? Things like that. So it's definitely an interesting experience. We've been wanting to make videos on our channel, but we have no idea how to start. Sapphire, the system organizer gatekeeper, has been pushing us to get started, but we've never gotten to it yet. It's one of those things where starting can be very hard with something like this, especially because it does involve some level of vulnerability, speaking about your experiences where people can see your face. Um, for us, we found that the easiest way to get started was just to begin with an introduction into what our specific diagnosis is, what it means, the generalized terminology that people would need to know to understand what we were talking about, and then just introducing ourselves and what our channel was about. That was the easiest way for us to start. Um, Maybe doing something similar like that might help you. We know that looking at other channels that are focused on DID or OSDD, that people have started with their own mini documentaries that they've made, or sometimes even just started with a simple, hi, this is my name, this is what I have going on, kind of an introduction. So probably our advice would be just start at the very beginning. Start from a place of the people you're talking to not having any idea what a dissociative disorder is, because it's very likely that some of your initial viewers won't have any idea what a dissociative disorder is. So start from that place and continuously build on the knowledge and the information that you provide, either on your own experiences or on educational stuff, whatever it is that you're planning to do for your guys' channel. Just start out with a beginning introduction and build on that. That's been the easiest path for us, and maybe that would work for you guys too. So just there's our bit of advice. It can be scary starting up online versus in person, in that everything in that is there permanently, in a sense, and social of any kind is perpetually confusing. Less cues, i.e. sarcasm, is difficult to pick up on online. Oh, very true. Yeah, I cannot tell you how many times we have been misunderstood in text, especially, not so much in videos, because in videos, a lot of times it's more easily understood what we mean because there's the body language and the tone of voice to go along with it. But in text, that can be a nightmare. We have had a lot of people assume that we were saying something out of malice, even though we were actually legitimately trying to help. So, yeah, it's hard to navigate sometimes. There is less ability to prepare yourself with strangers, where tools to read and assess any threats are made redundant, at least for our autistic selves, getting there slowly. I'm glad everyone is nice that we have so far encountered. Yes. Um, for me, being autistic as well, it definitely is difficult sometimes. But for me, I've found that the easiest method, especially when it comes to like text or even videos, if I'm watching or reading something that somebody else has put out there and I'm getting a particular perception of whatever content it is that they've made, I just legitimately ask outright, hey, this is what I'm hearing or reading or understanding. Is that what you mean? That was a tool that I actually learned in a college class of all places about um, communication and college preparedness and all of that, and has actually been repeated in therapy. It's God, what is it? Active communication. Um, and I find that that actually really helps, especially with that difficulty reading facial cues and social cues. Sometimes people get flustered or frustrated because they're not used to people asking them that. But I generally just avoid people who aren't nice to me in general. So if someone responds poorly to me asking for clarification, then that's just probably not someone I want to talk to. But I do find that just saying, "Hey, here's what I'm hearing. Is that what you mean?" really helps to alleviate any possible misunderstandings. I honestly wish that active communication and active listening was taught in school, because I think it's probably something that a lot of people, whether they're on the spectrum or have neurological differences or not, could probably really use. It would probably save everybody a lot of misunderstandings if everyone just learned to say, hey, here's what I'm hearing. Is that what you actually meant? And then when the other person goes, oh, no, 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 I mean this, and really listening instead of just thinking about what you're going to say next, that, it would make a huge difference. It really would. Rainbow System Us 2, I'm sure you'll do better than our first attempt made for mostly bloopers. May help y'all somehow. Well, I mean, any attempt is a good attempt, is my way of looking at it, especially when doing something new. Nobody expects you to get it right the first time or be exactly the best you can be the very first time you do something. I mean, having talked to other people who create content on YouTube, a lot of them point blank say that, looking back at their past videos, they cringe at how inexperienced they were. But that doesn't necessarily mean that those videos are bad. They were just inexperienced videos. So, we kind of look at it as this whole thing is a learning experience and you get better with practice. So maybe that idea can help you guys out too. Because it really is okay to not put out flawless content. Plenty of our content certainly is not flawless. So, there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody has the means to have, you know, extensively nicely set up backgrounds and, perfect editing softwares that just fix any and all problems. So, nobody expects YouTube videos to be perfect, because it's understood that the vast majority of us who create content are not professionals at creating content unless they've been doing it for a very long time. So, it also helps that YouTube now has a lot of guidelines about not being hateful, vitrolic trolls in the comment section, which used to be a serious problem. So, there's that too. Others good advice. Thank you. Haha. If only it were taught. English is extra difficult with multiple meanings. Oh, yeah. English is a confusing conundrum of a language. I've had that conversation with my daughter. I can't even tell you how many times about how many different possible meanings a word can have. Like, we actually just had a conversation about the meaning of a word and a miscommunication earlier tonight, where we were discussing the fact that there is a difference between something being rude and it just being something you don't like. That rude is socially inappropriate or harmful or mean behavior. That not liking something doesn't necessarily make it bad. So I definitely feel you on that. English is unnecessarily complicated sometimes. Thank you. Yeah, used to having to look like we know what we're doing all the time. It's hard to change that mentality. Yes, I completely get where you're coming from on that one. It took a very long time in therapy to break my personal habit of being an ardent perfectionist. It was really, really bad, especially in the past when we were younger. Oh my goodness. We're talking full on hour long meltdown if we made a mistake. So, trust me, I completely understand wanting to look like you know what you're doing and feeling a deep-seated need to never look imperfect or foolish or inexperienced in any way. Trust me, I get that. That is one of those things that is hard to get past. But, give yourself time to get there. It does take time. Give yourself the leeway to be where you're at and to get where you're going when you get there. It's not a race. Take the time that you need. Don't try to push yourself too hard too quickly. And I know that that is a lot easier said than done. Because even with all of the therapy that we've had, even with all of the years that we've been in therapy, I personally still have a hard time accepting certain limitations sometimes and accepting where we're at right now in this place without constantly wanting to just get to where we're going already. So I understand that that's hard. Just give yourself time and try to be patient with yourself, as difficult as that can sometimes be. Honestly, when it comes to being patient with yourself, one of the techniques that we've used that actually seems to really help is looking at it from the perspective of, if my friend or loved one was the one doing this, would I criticize or would I support them? The general idea being, treat yourself or the members of your system and yourself or, whomever it is that is involved directly in the functioning of you and, you all. But treat yourselves the way that you would treat someone that you love more than anything in the world. Give yourselves the same kindness, consideration, empathy, and understanding that you would give someone else. And that is not easy. It's not, because we're often our worst critics. It's hard and it takes practice. But it is something that can be done. One of the things that we did to get better at it was we wrote down affirmations, things that were positive that we would say to ourselves. And then, as silly and ridiculous as it felt, we would sit down and say those things out loud. Like, I am capable. It's okay to make a mistake. I'm worthy. And as ridiculous as it felt at first, eventually we started to believe those things more. We're still working on some of those things. We're still healing, and that's okay. But we're definitely in a much better place than we were even a few years ago, even a few months ago, for that matter. We continuously work to feel better about ourselves. Because our general way of looking at it, the consensus that we've reached with, at least those of us who can communicate with each other directly, is that we only have this one lifetime to do all of these things right now that we want to do, because, while we all have very different beliefs about the afterlife, because, we all have varying different spiritual beliefs, the consensus is that right now is the only thing that's for certain. This life we have right now is the only thing that we know absolutely for sure we've got right this minute. And that we want to not look back on it with regret. So that's our overall goal, is just to keep moving forward and accept when we stumble or need extra help. So we hope that, maybe that can help anyone out there who might need to hear that. But just remember that no matter what, you are valuable and worthy and valid, and it's okay to make mistakes, because mistakes are how we learn. Kit and others incredibly validating. Y'all have a great way of explaining things and great advice. It looks like we have taken over the chat though, so we should probably fall back. Sorry. So many questions, y'all. Oh, it's all good. Hey, we have no problem with anybody talking as much as they want to talk. Okay? As long as everybody feels comfortable knowing that they can talk when they feel comfortable talking, we're all good with anybody talking as much as they want. So if anybody wants to say anything, feel free. We can certainly scroll back up if we need to, if a lot of people are commenting at once. So don't feel pressured to, have to wait until someone else is done. Anybody who wants to comment, go ahead and comment, and we will make sure that we get to your comment. as best as we possibly can. Now, I mean, if we ever have a live stream where we have a significantly large number of people present, I mean, that would certainly be much harder. But we definitely will always make the effort to respond to comments as quickly as we possibly can and to the best of our abilities. And, a big part of why we all work so hard to make sure that we respond to any comments that we get, whether it's here in a live stream or on videos or email, is because there have been so many times when we've reached out trying to communicate with people and have been ignored. So we know how much that really hurts. So that's why, if nothing else, we give comments a little heart, or, make some sort of indication that we have read the comment, so that even if we're not up for replying right that minute, or whoever it is who the comment is to is not available in that precise moment, that whoever made the comment knows that we're listening. So if anybody else has any comments or any questions or just anything else they'd like to say, feel free. We're probably going to be finishing up in about the next 15 minutes or so, because we actually have some rather fun plans for this weekend that I know I'm going to be probably woken up early for. My daughter has been working very hard to save up her money to buy a video game system that she really wanted. And she finally saved up enough, and so she's ready and raring to get to that store to buy it. So I'm sure I'm probably going to be woken the minute she gets up tomorrow. Let's go to the store. So, that's why within probably the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to be ending the stream, just so everybody knows. And we're also going to be hanging out with some friends this weekend too, so that should be fun. Just wanted to drop by with support. We're busy now, unfortunately, but you all are awesome. Oh, why thank you. We really appreciate the support and you dropping by, even if it's just to say hello. We always welcome anybody stopping in to say hi, even if you can't stay long, even if it's just a quick, hey, hope you guys are doing well, or hi, how you doing? We appreciate anybody stopping by, and we welcome anybody who wants to stop by. And definitely hope that you're having a good time and that whatever you're busy with is a positive thing. So good luck on whatever it is that you're busy with right now. All of our questions have disappeared. Oh, yeah. I can understand that. Getting put on the spot, you go, "Oh, wait, what was I going to talk about?" Yeah, I've experienced that. You have a million things you want to say, and then the minute somebody asks you, it all flies right out the window. So I can feel you on that one. If you remember the questions later, feel free to email us, and we will be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. So if there's anything you want to ask or comment or what have you, just feel free to contact us. Yeah, we've recently actually been working on making more friendships where we live. So we've actually been meeting a lot of really cool people lately. And we've honestly made some really good friends so far. So we're certainly happy about that. Groovy, thank you. You're very welcome. Yeah, recently my husband and I and our system mates, because he is also a part of a system, have been working on exploring more about ourselves and making more friends and just kind of broadening our overall support network and happiness and just kind of trying to improve our lives overall, I guess. Someone is asking about time loss, but unsure what the specific question they are trying to ask is. Okay, well, if you're able to get any sort of clarification, feel free to ask. So definitely, let us know if you figure out what exactly the time loss question is, because I mean, there's a lot of information about time loss. It really just depends on what they're asking. Did y'all discover you were both in systems whilst together or beforehand? It was actually while together. Neither one of us was aware of the exact diagnosis of DID or being a part of a system when we got together. And it wasn't until we'd been together about, let's see, 3 years, I think, when I finally got an actual concrete diagnosis for what was going on with us. And then after I had a diagnosis and I started processing that and dealing with that, I started looking more closely at things that were going on with my husband and noticing, hey, these things are really similar, and I can really relate to a lot of these things that I'm seeing here. And so I said to him, hey, I've noticed these things, and maybe you should go, see somebody about this. And that was how he ended up getting a diagnosis about a year after me. Was that I pointed out to him that I noticed these similarities and maybe he should talk to somebody. So, yeah, we actually got a diagnosis within a fairly short span of each other. And over time, as we've both gained better communication with our system mates, we've actually found out that there were fairly frequent occasions when a system mate of mine and a system mate of his would talk to each other, interact, or go do things together that we were not aware of. So that was interesting to find out. Like the time that a system mate of mine and a system mate of his went out and spent $1,000 in a week. That was certainly an interesting experience because he and I were both really confused. We were like, what happened to our money? Sounds familiar so far. Very familiar, how ironic. Yeah, it's one of those things where, interestingly enough, talking to our therapist who specializes in DID, she said it's really not uncommon for people who have a dissociative disorder, whether it's DID, OSDD, or something else, to actually end up unintentionally involved in some form of relationship, be that friendship or romantic relationship or what have you, with other people who have dissociative disorders. For whatever reason, there seems to be this unconscious pull that pulls people together. It's not like an all the time occurrence, but it seems to happen frequently enough that it's a noted phenomenon. That even when both people aren't aware that they have dissociative disorders, that people seem to congregate. As our friend always said, the broken ones always find each other, or unbroken, as we say. Very true. It's like people who have the same kinds of things going on in their life seem to unconsciously gravitate to each other. Because that's something that both my husband and I have discussed noticing in our friend groups more than once, is that pretty much every friendship either he or I have had, or that we have now with people that we're both friends with, involves people who have similar life experiences, or who have mental health struggles, or who have trauma histories, or who have difficult medical conditions that make their lives more difficult to lead in some way or another. That we seem to make friends with people who have the same kinds of issues or similar kinds of issues going on that we do. And it's always been interesting to notice that, because we make friends with people from all kinds of different backgrounds, from all kinds of different nationalities, from all kinds of different hometowns. We've made friends with people from all over the continental United States, and some of them from outside of the continental United States. And without fail, it seems like the people that we end up gravitating towards are people who share one or another internal experiences. Like, for instance, one of our childhood best friends um, has certain identity things very much in common with me, and things that are, very integral to who we are as people, that neither one of us was aware of 100% until we were adults. And looking back on it, we could see the signs were there that, we both had this kind of thing going on. But it's just amazing to look back and see that here's this person that we were friends with for so many years as a young kid, that had this experience in common that we never realized. So it's just kind of one of those interesting phenomenon that we can't quite explain. So it looks like we've got about 2 minutes left. Any more questions or anything else? Likewise, funny, isn't it? I believe that humans have become desensitized to the subconscious pulls or cues that gravitate us to the people we end up around. Like you said, I have similar life experience. Yeah, I think it's kind of like instinct. A lot of people have been taught to ignore it. Like that gut feeling you get around certain people. And while I certainly don't think you should allow your gut impulses to run you, because that's certainly not healthy, it's definitely a good idea to pay attention to the kinds of people you gravitate towards, and to pay attention to your gut reactions to people, because especially when you have any sort of trauma history or neurodivergence or anything else going on in your life that's outside of the typical, those immediate connections that you gravitate towards can either fall within the spectrum of healthy or within the spectrum of maladaptive. So it's definitely a good idea to pay attention to those kinds of patterns. Like, in our past, we had an unfortunate tendency to make friends with people who were emotionally abusive. Now, not all of our friends were, but we did a lot gravitate towards people who did not treat us right. And that is something that we had to work really hard on. And thankfully, we were able to break that cycle. And we no longer make friends with those kinds of people, and we don't allow those kinds of people in our lives. But that was one of those things that we had to really take a long, hard look at the kinds of people that we gravitated towards and why we were gravitating towards them. Because we realized that some of the people we were gravitating towards because they reminded us of people who had mistreated us in the past and contributed to our traumas. And that wasn't healthy. But on the opposite side of that, we've also found that, like I said before, we tend to gravitate towards people who have similar issues or histories. And that has meant that we've been able to make friends with a lot of really good, decent people who treat us right, who also understand us in a way that someone else might not. So it's definitely had both positives and negatives, and it's definitely something worth looking at. Okay, so it looks like it is time to finish up. So any last minute questions or comments? If there are, we'll give you a couple seconds, minute here to write any of those out, and then we're going to go ahead and end the stream because we've been doing this for an hour and 46 minutes and we don't want them to get too long because then, other people don't want to watch them. And, also it gets kind of hard to sit on the floor after a while. Our floor is rather hard. We do need to invest in a chair. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you. You too. Have a good day, night, and Happy New Year. Have a good one. Thank you. You as well. We hope all of you have a good day, night, and New Year, and that everybody enjoys their weekend. And we will see you guys in our next live stream and hope to speak with you in the comments of our next video. And of course, remember that you can always email us at any point in time. So we hope to see and talk to you guys more in the future. Was nice to catch y'all. Sorry to anyone in comments if we took over or were rude at all. In our perspective, you were fine. So, I mean, other people, of course, have their own feelings, and those are also valid. Just understand that for us, you were fine. And also, just last minute thing to point out, something important that we heard today that we thought we'd pass along. Just because something is hurtful to someone or comes across as rude to someone does not necessarily mean that what you did was bad. Certainly make a note and respect other people's boundaries and apologize if necessary for any hurt that you may have caused, unintentionally, of course. But remember that everyone has their own things that are a hang up for them or that are difficult for them. And that doesn't necessarily make what you did a bad thing. Just something we wanted to pass along. So, good night/day to everybody. Happy New Year, and we will talk to you all again soon. Bye.